Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me on another episode of The Chamber Within. Last week, I mentioned possibly tackling the idea of what mindfulness is, and I'd like to do that today. I've been keeping tabs on my thoughts and the things I tell myself on a daily basis so that I do not end up repeating certain behaviors. I know for a fact it is way easier to look at other people and judge them by their actions, and really their actions are just an outpicturing of their thoughts and belief systems. For instance, you ever see someone in an unhealthy relationship and they leave that situation soon to be involved in yet another unhealthy partnership? Now, when I can notice patterns in other people, I immediately say to myself, if this is so obvious because I am on the outside looking in, well, maybe what isn't so obvious are my own habitual traits. That would be much more difficult, right? I too also have thoughts and behavioral patterns that are giving me outcomes I don't desire. I know that no man is an island, of course. You know, I'm referencing the poem by John Donne. It's really good, but I try to figure out what on earth am I doing or believing to be true that is causing issues in my life that I haven't yet noticed. Something I can't see because I'm not on the outside looking in. That person isn't an island, neither am I. We're all connected, and so we're all running around doing things that we probably shouldn't, but we can't tell because we're too close to the trees to see the forest. Now, I like to call this behavior the loop of unconsciousness. It's like a personal Groundhog Day. If you've ever seen the movie with Bill Murray, which is a classic, um, I'm referencing the Groundhog Day, but instead of living the same day every day, you are reliving the same hangups with different people or characters over and over in your life. And in my life, I'm doing the same. Okay. So they may not be the same exact occurrence happening at the same time every day, which would be very obvious, by the way, but rather the events and pitfalls are similar enough to notice if you become aware of them. Different people, different calendar day, yet same circumstances, leading you to feel the negative feelings about yourself: unworthy, invalidated, unloved, ignored. The list goes on and on. I remember years ago, I loved window shopping at a particular store. It was out of my price range, so I would just walk in to admire the clothing and then soon leave. Well, one day I was asked straightforward, why don't you just get that coat that you're so in love with? And my response was, I did nothing to earn it. I honestly felt unworthy of wearing a nearly $200 stylish winter coat. But it wasn't the price. I would always come up with an excuse as to why I didn't deserve a new outfit, a pair of shoes, a lot of things. Mostly it was chalked up to, well, my daughter could use a new outfit, and that would be the end of the story. I was thinking I'd be a bad mom if I adorned myself or purchased anything, especially something as costly as that was to me at the time. It was just a hard no. But I felt that I was not deserving of such an item, especially if it was, you know, on a whim or I'm out and about and I see something I like. I would have thoughts of I hadn't worked hard enough. So that was a lie. I was working very hard. I was waiting tables actually and going to school and being a mom and just doing all the things I thought would check the box of a worthy person, even still while denying myself of such things. And it probably didn't look nice on me, I thought, as it does on the mannequin anyway. Another lie. This is when I was unconsciously speaking out loud that I was unworthy. I was undeserving. Period. When I think back, this is the beginning of me recognizing that I out loud am saying, I'm not good enough for this thing. And then I would wonder why my closet looked so bare. Like, duh. You won't accept nice things or anything for the matter. And that's why you have very little items to choose from. But skipping to Christmas later that year, I received the very same coat. the one that I was looking through the window at and going in and touching and trying to imagine myself wearing such a thing and then walking out without it every single time. Once I owned it, I realized how foolish I was being, how I was only reinforcing a feeling of unworthiness. I can remember not feeling as bad because it was half off, so it was only $100, but that's not the point. This played out in so many ways in my life, but this silly little coat story is the marker in my life of when I began to notice that maybe I shouldn't trust my own thoughts and perhaps can choose better ones. This is where the mindfulness comes in. As much as we're told as children to watch our mouths and be careful of what we say about others, the real gift as we live our lives is applying this idea to the thoughts that we have about ourselves and also to the things that we say to ourselves. As a young mom, I would often say, "I'm so stupid," or "I'm an idiot," out loud. I would say that for years. And then one day, my daughter says to me, she stops me and looks at me with a very serious face. "I don't like it when you say that about yourself." I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, I know, I know." She looked at me again. She's like, "No, I'm serious." Like she's pulling my attention away from whatever I was thinking of to let me know that it was not cool. And she didn't want to hear it anymore. And it took for her to say that for me to really think about what I was saying about my own self. Someone was talking about her mother. It just happens to be her mother talking about her own mother, which kind of sounds a little bananas, but it's the truth. I would hate for her to say nasty things about herself while I'm sitting there. I gave birth to this wonderful human, this beautiful baby, and I don't like it when that baby talks nasty about herself. And therefore, she was saying that to me, and it really made me think, what am I teaching her by behaving this way? I was becoming aware of my thoughts in order to be released from negative patterns. That's where it all begins. How I become intentionally mindful is to say, how on earth does this current line of thinking serve me? Well, I know how it isn't because I'm feeling negative feelings about myself. I'm feeling stress, anxiety, and nervousness. These are all stemming from the thoughts that are running rampant, and I must clean house. Now, mindfulness allows us to escape this loop of unconscious thinking, going around and round with ourselves and ending up nowhere. Going from "why are these things always happening to me" kind of mindset, which is a disempowered point of view, and stepping into a position of power where I can see my participation and how it affects all aspects of my life, and sadly, how it affects others, like our own children. So, full disclosure, this is a task that takes real effort, but it is so worth it once you keep trying. Once you get into the habit of catching those thoughts mid mood when you are really tearing yourself apart, you can start to neutralize them by saying, "That is not true." Whenever I had begun to get into mindfulness, I would take notice first, right? I would take notice of the negative feelings and thoughts I was having. And if I was thinking, "I'm an idiot" or "I'm stupid," I would short stop them and say, "That is not true," just to stop that thought in its tracks. I would then begin to neutralize my thoughts and thus my feelings by saying, "I am deeply loved and deeply cared for." I am deeply loved and deeply cared for. I would say it as many times as I needed to feel better and pull myself into a higher feeling, even if it was just one notch up, because it was better than the notch below it. This is a practice, and it's a practice that I have done for quite some time. I mean, if you can let those nasty, absurd ideas run around in your mind, you can surely begin to clean house by allowing this very true thought to enter your psyche. Be kind to yourself as best you can and as often as you can. I know it isn't easy, but you are so worth it. Please know that. Before I leave you today, I just want to take a moment to say whether this is the first episode of mine that you've listened to or you've been walking with me for a while, a heartfelt thank you. This episode marks one full year of this podcast. It has been 1 year of me sharing my thoughts, my experiences, and my insights. The very first episode, I was pacing. I was so nervous. I sit down now because I feel comfortable speaking my thoughts to you. And the fact that you're here listening truly means more than I can put into words. So thank you for spending your time with me. As always, if you have any questions or comments about your awakening or questions about my awakening, and there's something that you'd love to share, I am more than happy to hear it. And I would love to share it during an episode, a future episode. My email is thechamberwithin@yahoo.com, and my YouTube page is at The Chamber Within. You all have a great week, and I will talk to you later. Bye bye.